We're good. It's nice. It's fine. Unless it's bugging you.
I just didn't hear you. I don't know.
I'll talk. I'll speak up. I'll speak louder. Whenever you're talking to somebody, and you're trying to teach them something, which in a lot of ways is non-different than rhetoric, where you're trying to persuade somebody. I think teaching is really the art of persuasion as much as lawyering is. It used to be that, people would get an education in oration, in public speaking, in rhetoric, in debate. And what a public speech, what a sermon, what a lecture. Ultimately boils down to is it's an attempt to convince your audience of something that you want to teach them. Now, there might be exceptions to this. Like, you can imagine if you went to a college level math class with a super dull math teacher and he simply just wrote down formulas and on the board. He's not really trying to convince you of anything. There's an already pre-established assumption that he's an authority, that you have to listen to him, that whatever he says goes, and therefore he's just disseminating information. So I'm talking about actually like teaching somebody something substantive that requires them to shift their paradigm, that enlightens them, that illuminates. It's all rhetoric. And people knew this. That's why the Greeks and the Romans, and even Englishmen, and even people in this country up until 60 years ago, standardly studied rhetoric. They studied the art of persuasion. They studied how to make a compelling argument, how to give an impactful speech. I think it's largely a lost art. I think people in general are less adept at it. And of course, people who are skilled at oration stand out even more than they used to because there's a dearth of it in society at large. You guys following me so far? When you want to convince somebody of something, it's important to know where you guys already agree. Because where you guys already agree is your starting point. If you believe in Vishnu, then the first thing that you have to be convinced of is that Krishna is above Vishnu. If you look at the beginning of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, opus of our tradition, this encyclopedia of our theology, mixed with the pastimes of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This instant classic that was written in vernacular, it was written in Bengali, to take Sanskrit texts and make them accessible to people who were not learned in the formal language of Sanskrit. But it was so authoritative that somebody actually wrote a Sanskrit commentary on it. just to say that this book, even though it's written in the vernacular language, imagine writing a Greek commentary on the King James Bible. You're trying to convince people. This King James Bible, with this English translation, is so good that I'm going to write a Greek commentary on it because it's better than the original Greek Bible. You follow? That's what our tradition did. They wrote a Sanskrit commentary on the Bengali Chaitanya Charitamrita. Anyway, it starts off with Krishnadas Kaviraj explaining to you that Krishna is God. Then he explains to you that Chaitanya is Krishna. He starts with the idea that Krishna is God, that Krishna is Vishnu, really. He starts with the idea that Krishna is Vishnu. And then that Chaitanya is Krishna. Why? Because the people he was ministering to accepted that Vishnu was God. Therefore, he started with Vishnu and he taught them about Krishna. Look at the Bible. The Bible starts off with the assumption that the Mosaic God, the God of Moses, was established as a fact, and now what do they have to convince you of? They have to convince you that Jesus was the Messiah of that Mosaic God and the Mosaic Abrahamic tradition. You following this? The Bible presupposes, the Christian Bible presupposes the Hebrew Bible's authenticity and builds on it as a pre-existing scaffolding or framework on which to hang their new realizations. This is always what happens. You do it and you don't even know you do it. If you start talking to somebody, you realize they don't speak English very well. You immediately dumb down your speech. You start speaking very slowly and making sure that the person can understand what you are saying. You follow? When you use a cultural reference and you see the other person doesn't grasp it because they didn't grow up in your milieu, then you pivot and you come up with another reference or you explain your reference. You start with what you have in common with somebody, and then you build on that to the new territory. And that's how you teach somebody something new. Arguably, even your math teacher starts with an understanding that you know arithmetic and builds on that to teach you more advanced math. He might not be a rhetorician per se, but he's essentially doing the same thing. He's starting with where you're at, where you have in common your body of knowledge, where your knowledge, what the ceiling of your knowledge is, and then he takes the ceiling off and takes you further. You follow? 5 centuries ago, most of the people we were ministering to were Vaishnavas. But they weren't Chaitanya Vaishnavas. They might not have been Krishna Bhaktas. So we would start, get a beat on them. Okay, you believe in Vishnu. Let me tell you about Krishna. Oh, you believe in Krishna? Let me tell you about Chaitanya. That's how it would work. In fact, it wasn't even quite that simple. We would say, you're about Vishnu? Let me tell you about Radha and Krishna. And let me really explain Radha to you. And then you'll be able to understand Chaitanya. That's actually how the Chaitanya Charitamrita starts. Vishnu to Krishna, Krishna to Chaitanya, and then while exploring Chaitanya, you have to delve into Radharani, because to understand Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in a significant way, you have to understand Radharani. I got a running joke with a friend of mine, Shruti Prabhu. Somebody criticized me, which isn't tough to do, but sometimes there's so many ways you can criticize me legitimately, but people come up with all sorts of incorrect ways to criticize me often. displaying their ignorance. It's almost like I need to hand them like when you go to a ball game, you get a program. I give them a program of my faults, so it's easy for them, you know. Anyway, this person was criticizing that on Gaur Purnima, I spent most of my class talking about Radharani. He saw it as a fault, and Shruti Prabhu was like, have you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita? Krishna's Kaviraj says, if you want to understand Chaitanya, first you have to understand Radharani. And so, and it's like a running joke. It was maybe 5-10 years ago, somebody criticized me for this. And so, every few months or like every year or so, Shruti Prabhu will cut a joke and we'll laugh about it. This is rhetoric. It's the art of persuading. It's oration. Again, the art of persuading. It's debate. Again, the art of persuading. It's lawyering. The art of persuading. It's teaching. The art of persuading people to your point of view. It's missionary work. The art of persuading people. And irrespective of whether you're doing it in a secular world or in a religious context, it's all the same thing. You figure out what you got in common with people, you get a baseline, and you move from there. Just like with a lie detector test, you get a baseline. Just like with therapy, you figure out what their worldview is, what the deficiencies are, and you start to reframe. Therapy is the art of persuading. It's all rhetoric. The lost art. For our Gaudiya lineage 500 years ago, these super brilliant pundits had this impossible task. They had to convince the world that Chaitanya was Krishna. Now every Hindu group throws down that their guru is an avatar. So that's not that big of a deal. The thing is, when we say Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna, we really have a developed understanding of what Krishna means. Most people who want to say my guru is an avatar, they're like, what does that mean? He's like divinely inspired, self-realized, maybe he's got some mystic powers. When we say Chaitanya is Krishna, we mean that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 500 years ago came into this world and he was the cause of all the universes. The substratum of all existence. The genesis of everything which has ever and will ever exist. The father and mother of heaven and earth. The one without a second, the cynosure of all reality, the ground of being. The cause of all causes. You follow? If you have a developed theology and then you want to say that this person is God, the task becomes much more onerous because your claim just got much bigger. In the minds of most people, if you are a black belt in a martial art, you're like Bruce Lee. You can like beat up like 20 people like by yourself with guns and knives. You're Jason Bourne because you have a black belt. Sometimes black belts would come into our gym and our sensei would make the white belts fight the black belts to make the point that our white belts beat your black belts. I had to do this maybe 50 times in my first year of jiu-jitsu. It was a regular occurrence. I was a low man on the totem pole, so I would fight the black belts from other schools, and it would sometimes get messy or whatever, but it was like my sensei wanted to make a point. When we would go to other schools sometimes, I was training at a place where they also taught Taekwondo. And so we're getting ready to spar, and the black belt in Taekwondo, I'm like, oh, you got a black belt? He's like, hey, man, I got a learning permit, okay? I got a driver's license. Let's not make too big of a deal out of it. Like he wanted to make it real clear from the get-go that amongst us martial artists, I shouldn't think that he wanted to it was a little bit like a humble thing. He didn't want to turn it into like some kind of major fight, and so he discounted what a black belt was amongst aficionados. You follow? To set a proper standard, so I wouldn't have an unreasonable expectation of what he was gonna present. Does that make sense? You got to agree on your starting point. If you don't agree on your starting point, you're saying one thing, but the other person's understanding something totally different. Socrates says, first thing you got to clarify terms. Then you know what you're talking about. When I say love, I mean this. You're not trustworthy. No, I'm trustworthy. No. You just lied to me, right? Well, yeah. Okay, but for me, trustworthy means you don't lie. Oh, okay. I guess I'm not trustworthy. You follow? The beginning of any discussion usually is a clarifying of terminology. When you say this, when I say this, when you say this, this is what we're agreeing this means. You get all that sorted out. Now you got your platform to start from, and then you begin moving forward from there. What will you accept? If somebody prove to me God exists, okay, well, what will you accept as proof? People usually get stumped when you ask them that. I've never asked somebody that question and had them just be like, here's what I'll accept as proof. Well, show it to me. Okay, let me get this straight. You want me to show you God the way I would show you like a book? Because when I'm talking about God, I'm talking about a spiritual being. Is that what you're talking about? Then why would you expect God to exist in the same way a book exists? Do you follow? Why would you expect it to be that easy? I mean, even quantum mechanics isn't that easy to show somebody. You gotta spend some time. They gotta learn a language. They have to learn concepts. You gotta get into Planck. You gotta get into light, the speed of light, general theory of relativity. You have to get into like what things that go on a microscopic level, the things we know happen on a microscopic level. The fuzzy properties of matter on a real minute level. It takes time. Why would you expect me to be able to show you God like I show you a book? We must not be talking about the same thing. What would you accept as evidence? What will you accept as proof? Who do you accept as an authority? What time's the archery start? The archery starts at 7:30. Says who? Says me. Well, who are you? I'm the pujari. I'm the one who does the arti. Okay. Conversation over. Right? What time's the archery start? 7:30. How do you know? It says so on the marquee outside. Oh, okay. What would you accept as evidence? Who will you accept as an authority? What do you already believe? These are the things we do. So, 5 centuries ago, our tradition decided that Chaitanya was God. If you believe Chaitanya's God, you really believe our tradition. Because we don't have videos of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exploding like the sun onto the horizon. We have eyewitness accounts in the form of poetry, sacred text. If you believe in Jesus, you really believe the apostles. If you have faith in Jesus, you have faith in the apostles. There is no other way around it. There's no other version of Jesus that exists. Everything that ever has been ever written about Jesus, ever exists about Jesus, came from the apostles and then people who came from them. There is no secular account. There's no other account. They're the origin place. Everything else traces back to them. Now you could say you have your own realization of Jesus. Well, then why call him Jesus? Just by using the word Jesus, you're a follower of the apostles. You understand? Just by using that word, you already bought into the tradition. Why not call him Hector? Something else. You follow? Well, I had my own experience. All right, then you're a prophet. And then I had my own experience of Q. Okay, well then you're the prophet. And then people are going to follow you. And then people want to know Q, they got to go through you. That's the same principle. If you have faith in Chaitanya, you have faith in the Goswamis. There's no other way around it. Those are the Goswamis. That's our tradition. They framed out our tradition. This all came from them. All our deities, our mood of worship, it all came from them. Does it make sense? There's nothing wrong with that. That shouldn't shake your faith. That shouldn't bewilder you. It should just then make you examine more carefully what they said to make sure that you believe in it. Now, there are lots of followers of Chaitanya, but most of them don't worship Nityananda. That's a particular sect. We're that sect. Most of them don't worship the Panchatattva. That's a particular sect. We're that sect. There were followers of Advaita. He had 6 sons. 3 of them are part of our tradition. 3 of them aren't. 3 of them decided Advaita was Krishna. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a story where Krishnadas Kaviraj, the author of the text, said, my brother had faith in Chaitanya, but no faith in Nityananda. And I told him, you're like someone who accepts half a hen. Like the goose lay the golden egg. That's called Ardha Kukuti Nyaya in Sanskrit. Half hen logic. You cut the neck of the hen so you don't have to feed it, but you still think you're going to get the eggs. But without feeding the hen, you won't get the egg. So he said, you're like, you have half-hen logic. You'd be better off being an atheist by ignoring both brothers than being a hypocrite by accepting one but not the other. What does that tell us? That he had that conversation with his brother. That there were people around who accepted Chaitanya but who did not accept Nityananda. You follow? Vrindavan Das Thakur, the predecessor of Krishna Das, who wrote the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he wrote a book called Chaitanya Bhagavat. It's an earlier text. That Chaitanya Bhagavat is filled with statements. If you accept Chaitanya but you don't accept Nityananda, you're nonsense. I don't want to know your name. I don't want to see your face. What does that prove? That proves that there were people who accepted one without the other. We're a real specific sect. We're the sect of Krishnadas Kaviraj. We're the sect of Narottam Das Thakur. And they came up with the Panchatattva, with the hierarchy. And we have this Panchatattva mantra that we chant. I want to go over an earlier version of it. I want to go over an earlier version of it. From Narottam. Predates the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Dhanamor Nityananda. It's a song. Dhana Moda Nityananda Pati Mogoda Chandra Pranamo Jugala Kishore. That's the first line. Dhana More Nityananda. Nityananda is my wealth. More means my. Dhan means wealth. Nityananda. Dhana More Nityananda. Nityananda is my wealth. My Shiksha Guru, he recites his own affirmations every day. Things he's written down that encapsulate what he believes in. He also has a priority list that he recites every day. They form a guiding light in his life. He shared them with me recently, which was like a very special thing. He sent them to me so I could read them and edit them and look them over. It was like a real honor for me. I asked him if he wanted me to, and he said, yeah. One of the things he said that really struck me, he said that my integrity is my strength. My austerity is my wealth. I started thinking, like, what's the difference between integrity and austerity? Why is one strength? Why is one wealth? There's a famous statement, austerity is the wealth of the Brahmanas. It's a way of saying that Brahmanas are known and famous for their austerity. My integrity is my strength. I looked up integrity in Prabhupada's. We have a folio where everything Prabhupada ever said is in one place. So I looked up the word integrity. There were many hits, but I looked for how Prabhupada used integrity, and he used the word integrity to mean integrated. But he only used the word integrity twice as actual like integrity. He talked about professional integrity for a businessman. In other words, like doing your business operations legitimately. And he used the word integrity in the 8th canto of the Bhagavatam one time to mean honor. Integrity means that you are honest, that you're straightforward, that you live according to your own values, whatever those values might be. That there's just a straight line between your values and your lifestyle. In a lot of ways, integrity is the opposite of duplicity. If you have integrity, then you are not duplicit. You're not crooked. You're not a hypocrite. These would be antonyms of integrity to help you understand the way the term is used. My integrity is my strength. We have a line, Advaita Acharya Bala. Advaita is my strength. The song is, Nityananda is my wealth, Pati More Gaurachandra. Gaurachandra, Chaitanya is my master. Pranamor Jugala Kishore. The divine couple is my life. Nityananda is my wealth, Chaitanya is my master, the divine couple, Radha Krishna, are my life. Pranamor Jugala Kishore. Useful couple. Radha Krishna. Advaita Acharya Bala. Advaita is my strength. Gadadhar More Kula. Gadadhar is my family. Narahari Vilasi More. Narahari is my joy. Narahari was an earlier follower of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who was famous for singing beautiful, beautiful poems and songs. Narottam was also a poet. Narahari was an earlier poet who wrote beautiful songs about Chaitanya. One of the originals, like one of the earliest poets. Murari Gupta, Narahari, they were the earliest stratum of poets. Narahari Vilasi More. Narahari is my vilas, my pleasure, my pastime, but my enjoyment. These are what the word vilas means, but in this context it means my joy, my greatest joy. Nityananda is my wealth. Mahaprabhu is my master. The divine couple is my life. Advaita is my strength. Gadadhar is my family. And Narahari is my joy. The songs of Narahari, the mood of Narahari, the love of Narahari, the poetry of Narahari is my joy. Especially for a poet like Narottam, that would be apropos. You can see how Narahari is a stand-in for Srivas. Right? You find that sometimes. And they're like in some of these versions, you find that. As I read over my guru's affirmations and sat with them and meditated on them myself, I found a lot of strength in them. I found like they were powerful. And as I was appreciating to him, I pointed out, I don't think he had thought of it. I said, these are very much like, this is how our acharyas write. They write, this is my this is my this is my this. He seemed surprised when I brought it up. I'm not sure. I can't say for certain, but he seemed a little surprised when I made the connection. He seemed happy about the connection. I can't tell. It seemed like it hadn't dawned on him. He naturally was writing like our acharyas did. But I didn't say, did that surprise you? Had you thought of that? I don't do that. So I brought it up and I made the connection myself, and he seemed happy and joyous. Like it meant something to him. He might have just appreciated it. I noticed it. I think there's a lot of power in these kind of affirmations. I'm a servant of the servant of the Lord of the Gopis. You know? I'm a servant of the Supreme Lord. I'm not this body. In life and in death, I'll follow my Guru's instructions. Make the instructions of your Guru one with your heart. Abandon all varieties of Dharma and surrender to me. When you look through our sacred literature, you find sprinkled, always chant my glories. So you find sprinkled through our sacred literature these really potent, short, pithy, terse, pregnant, powerful affirmations. Austerity is my wealth is a beautiful one. When you have to do something you don't want to do, when you have to do the right thing even though you don't want to do the right thing, you remind yourself, austerity is my wealth. You know, like sometimes professional athletes, pros play hurt. That's why they pay me. Pros play hurt. You follow? I remember watching on Instagram, they had some very famous soccer player, and the other guy brushed up against his shoulder, and he held his shoulder and fell on the ground and writhed around in pain. Then they had these women playing rugby. Some woman jumped into the other woman and just wasted her, just gutted her, concussed her, just boom, and she just got back up. Her nose was exploded, blood's pouring all over her face, and she just got right back up and started running again. And it showed you the difference. It's become like an art form how to feign injuries in professional soccer. I saw one recently where one boxer went up to the other boxer and they were like doing the glove touch, and the guy leaned in and touched his head to the other guy's head, and the guy fell over. And it was like, dude, you picked the wrong sport. Like, you feigning injuries because you guys like just touched at the like before like the match started, and you want to like feign an injury. Like, just wait till they ring that bell, and the guy's like job is to punch you in the face. Pros play hurt. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. These are affirmations. They're tight little statements that are meant to help you through difficult times to do the right thing. Austerity is my wealth. But we have another version. Nityananda is my wealth. It communicates something different. My Guru Maharaj started off with his personal conduct, and then he built to our tradition, and Chaitanya and Radha Krishna, he went up from himself on the way up. We do the same thing when we go on the altar. I'm not a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. You chant that when you go on the altar? It's called a Bhuta Shuddhi. It's a tantric practice. Before you go on the altar, you disintegrate your material body and take on a spiritual body. Naham vipro na cha na patir na pi na vaishyo na shudro. I'm not a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. Mahaprabhu said this. Naham varni na chagriya patir na vanasto yatirva. I'm not a Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, or Sannyasi. Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. Kintu projanakila paramananda purnamritabdir gopi bhartu padakamler das das anudas. What I am, but I am the servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord of the Gopis. Who's an ocean of nectar, who's an ocean of bliss. This is what I'm not. This is what I am. I'm a pure spirit soul, a servant of Krishna, and with that I leave aside my material body and I go on the altar in an angelic form to serve the deity as the angels do. So my Guru Maharaj starts off with that, which I thought was nice. But Narottam starts off differently. Dhanamor Nityananda. Nityananda is my wealth. For our sect, Nityananda is the incarnation of mercy. He is a Kripa avatar. He's the avatar of mercy. It goes beyond the Christian conception of Jesus. Nityananda is like a volcano of mercy that rains everywhere, that inundates the world with love of God, that picks up everybody, that just is like the sun rising in the sky, shining light and mercy and love on the whole world, who doesn't look down upon anybody, who doesn't find fault with anybody. It's different than Jesus. It's kind of like Christ the Redeemer. He paid for everybody's sins. Salvation and redemption are two different things. In Catholicism, salvation is going back to heaven. Redemption is just having your sins paid for. But you can still not become divinized. Redemption is one of the few words in the Catholic canon that comes from, that's an English term, that doesn't find its like origin in the Bible, from what I remember from the Encyclopedia of Catholicism. I'll Google it, but I'm 95% sure. It's one of the few terms that doesn't derive from the Bible, from Greek, that actually like is like a Western term, which has been adopted by the church. Nityananda goes beyond that. He's just like giving out love of God. There's Nityananda. He's like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is coming to kill Jagai Madhai, who cut Nityananda, and Nityananda is saying, no, you like don't hurt them. If you hurt them, you'll have to hurt everybody. Everyone's offensive. And anyway, they might have cut me, but then the other one stopped him from beating me more. So like he has a good quality. They were assaulting me, but then the one said, don't assault him more. So you should be merciful to them. And Nityananda said, if I've ever done anything to make you happy, then you please spare them. It's very Christian-esque, but it's non-sectarian. It's for everybody. Now we still philosophize that you have to accept it. If you don't accept it, then we can't help you. So there is that idea that you have to accept the mercy. And in that sense, we don't wind up that much different. But he didn't come to bleed. He came just to like give you love and shine a light. It's not that his bleeding is his big contribution to the world. One of the big critiques I have of Christianity is that an all-good and all-powerful God could create a better world in a world where God, like somebody had to come and die and bleed in order for you to learn a lesson. Christ might have come and died and bled, but Christian theology says that Christ had to come and die and bleed in order for you to be saved. But I can think of a better world. I can think of a world where Christ came, set a beautiful example, gave people love of God, and their hearts were turned. Because I see people's hearts being turned without witnessing torture. And if people's hearts could only be turned by witnessing torture, then you have a pretty big problem, because God could have created a better world than a world where we're so broken we can only be redeemed if we witness torture. Nityananda doesn't have that deficiency. He just showered the world with love of God. He also sometimes suffered. But that's not his crowning glory. His crowning glory is that he gave love of God to everybody from any caste. Men and women, high and low caste, rich and poor, Westerners and Indians, everybody. He just had that much love. His heart was exploding with love. Gaur Govinda Maharaj, the great Vaishnava saint who passed away in 1995, he passed away while chanting about Radha and Krishna's pastimes. He was giving a lecture, he was speaking about Radha and Krishna's pastimes, and he had a heart attack and died. That was it. Called out for kirtan, and 15 minutes later left his body. I was present. It's like his heart was so full with love of God that it just burst, and he left this world. That's Nityananda. The Lord so filled with love that he just showers out on people. That's our wealth. That's our hope. Narottam says, ha ha Prabhu Nityananda. Ha ha means, oh, it's like you cry. Ha ha Prabhu Nityananda. Premananda Shuki. You're in the bliss of love of God. You're so happy. Kripa balokana koro. Turn your glance of mercy towards me. Ami bodo duki. I'm so sad. I'm sad, but you're so happy. Please turn your glance towards me. Nityananda is my wealth. I think both affirmations have value. Austerity is my wealth. Nityananda is my wealth. They're powerful affirmations. Advaita is my strength, because Advaita called out to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to come down. Therefore, Advaita is my strength, because on the strength of Advaita's devotion, on the strength of his Sudridha Bhakti, on the strength of his unlimited devotion towards the Lord, he called the Lord down, and the Lord became awakened. Came into this world. Advaita is my strength. My integrity is my strength. This one I really appreciate. Prabhupada said purity is the force. Prabhupada's disciple one time encapsulated Prabhupada's teachings. Books are the basis, purity is the force, preaching is the essence, utility is the principle. I think he read it to Prabhupada and Prabhupada appreciated it. Purity is the force. My integrity is my strength. Advaita is my strength. Advaita had the most integrity. He was the most fixed. If he spoke on bhakti and he was not able to convince his audience, he would fast. Wouldn't eat that day. Such bhakti is Krishna akarshani. Akarshani means it's the attractor of Krishna, the attractive one. It's Krishna akarshani. It's the attractor of the all-attractive one. When a devotee's bhakti is fixed like a line carved into a stone, like a line etched into a stone, the Lord's attracted by that because he knows that you're not going to take anything else. He'll throw some rubies and gems and fame and enjoyment at you. See if you'll bite. But the devotees won't bite. And then Krishna ultimately has to surrender. They only want me. They're not going to take anything else. Krishna must be proud of his devotees who love him so much. There'd be something wrong with him if he wasn't. Krishna says, I'm the devotee of my devotees. If you say you're my devotee, you're not my devotee. If you say you're a devotee of my devotee, then you're my devotee. Advaita is my strength, and in gratitude and respect, then my integrity becomes my strength. And I do the right thing. These are powerful affirmations. They'll save you. They'll save you. They will act like a torch to guide you through your spiritual life, through the darkness, the dark times of your spiritual life. Nityananda is my wealth. Chaitanya is my master. Radha Krishna my life. It's beautiful. We're devoted to Chaitanya, and we're also devoted to Radha Krishna. We love Chaitanya, we love Radha Krishna. You go back to Krishna. But for us, you go back to Krishna and you enjoy Krishna in two ways. You wind up with Krishna's Gaur, and you're an angel serving Gaur in the spiritual world. And you simultaneously serve Radha and Krishna in the spiritual world. And they're the same. That's like two facets of a gem. And your soul expands and takes on an appropriate form to serve both. Radha Krishna my life, Gaur is my master, Advaita is my strength, Gadadhar is my family. Gadadhar is Radharani. The Gaudiyas are famous because we are partial to Radharani, even above Krishna. We're devotees of Radha Krishna, but we're most devoted to Radharani. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada's guru said, if you worship Vishnu, you're a Vaishnav. If you worship Krishna, you're a Karshna. These are called patronymics. It's when you take a word and you say someone who's derivative of that. Like the son of a person. Like McDonald is the son of Donald. McGregor, the son of Gregor. So, Vaishnava, the son or daughter of Vishnu. Krishna, child of Krishna. If you worship Vishnu, you're a Vaishnava. If you worship Krishna, you are a Krishna. And if you worship Radharani, then you are a Gaudiya. That's our tradition. That's not a patronymic. Gaudiya means you're from Gauda Desh, which is modern day Bengal. But he's trying to make a philosophical point. You think if you worship Radharani, then you're a Gaudiya, meaning that's our tradition. Gadadhar Morkula. Gadadhar is my family. Narahari Vilasi Mor. Those sweet songs of Narahari, the predecessor poets, those who walked before me and carried the torch before me and did what I do before I did it and showed me the way so I can follow in their footsteps. They're my joy. Narottam was a poet. Narahari was a poet. I think there's a lot of power in these affirmations. I think we should all write such affirmations. I think we should write down a credo, principles we live by, who we are, what we stand for, how we live our lives. My guru said, I'm daring in my preaching. I appreciate it so much. He takes risks when he goes out. He's trying to invent new ways. Following the instructions of Srila Prabhupada is my life and soul, he said. Showing his fidelity to his predecessors. I take every opportunity to love Krishna. I cultivate relationships with mentors. I find the best of teachers and faithfully follow them. He has this beautiful list of instructions of how he lives his life, what he's about, what he stands for. He includes, I'm not the body. I'm quick to forgive. So I was reflecting. I got this treasure chest from my guru of his personal affirmations. I was thinking about translating them into Sanskrit or Bengali and making a song out of them. So he would have a song with kind of like a retranslate them back into an original language. But I got this treasure chest and I was reflecting on it and I was thinking about our tradition and the very unique tradition that we're part of. And rhetoric and the power of convincing and how much power there is in a powerful aphorism. Malcolm X has a sermon he delivered, for lack of a better term, a lecture he gave called The Ballot and the Bullet. It was right before the elections in 1964. After he broke from the Nation of Islam, he gave this lecture right before he went on the Hajj and went to Mecca and had his mind blown when he saw all the white Muslims with blonde hair and blue eyes worshiping with the black Muslims and realized his whole white versus black thing was all made up and it wasn't actually representative of Islam. They came back with his mind blown, admitted he was a fool and changed his preaching. Some things he didn't change, but the bullet and the ballot, he kept saying it over and over again. What he meant was, we'll vote. We'll vote. But if we don't get equal rights, then we'll get a gun. You follow? We're not these are our rights. You can't take them away. We'll vote. You want us to play the game? We'll vote. But if you don't give us our rights by the ballot, then we'll pick up arms. And we'll fight for our rights. He was very critical of Martin Luther King and the March on Washington. He called it the farce on Washington. People stand together. He was disgusted. People stand together and the fountains singing, "We shall overcome together," locked in arms. It's like it's the opposite of what you want to teach people. He said, now they know you'll come all the way to Washington with 100,000 people and do nothing and create no danger and create no damage. That's not how people change. There has to be a revolution. If you follow all the rules, there's no reason to change because you're compliant. You make noise, but you don't actually do anything. And so they continue to abuse you because all you'll ever do is sing Kumbaya. So his response to that was to say, and in his speech, he said it like 20 times, it's the ballot or the bullet. You understand, everybody? It's the ballot or the bullet. It's the ballot or the bullet. Every 2 or 3 paragraphs, it's the ballot or the bullet. For an entire hour, it's the ballot or the bullet. You understand? The ballot or the bullet. It's going to be one or the other, the ballot or the bullet. He's trying to drive it in deep so when you needed it, it would be there. My integrity is my strength. My austerity is my wealth. The instructions of Srila Prabhupada are my life and soul. You follow? Nityananda is my wealth. Mahaprabhu is my master. Radha Krishna my life. Advaita is my strength. Gadadhar is my family. Narahari is my joy. Srivas also was like this. He was a Vaishnava. He was married. He was a Grihastha. He took care of his family. And he had epic, unprecedented love for the Lord. And so he's our Nityananda. We can't quite copy Nityananda. It's like trying to copy a volcano. One of Prabhupada's godbrothers, the late and great Srila Sridhar Maharaj, wrote a book. He called his book The Golden Volcano of Divine Love. The golden volcano of divine love. That's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What a beautiful. How do you copy a volcano? But Srivas we can follow. He's our joy because he walked right in front of us and we can follow in his footsteps. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. I think we're all done. Thank you very much for your kind attendance. You guys can stay. Instagram we can say goodbye to. Thank you so much.